that we could get our lives complicated with so many things. And I've shared a bit about this as God's been showing me things over the past year. But it's very important that we learn simplicity of heart. And one of the dangers, or probably the biggest enemy I've found in my life, the biggest demon that keeps from a life of simplicity is when I worry about what other people think. When I'm trying to please people, my life gets very complicated. I start doing a lot of unnecessary things in order to either keep up appearances so I look like I'm doing something, or I'm trying to please people. You know, I can't even probably please one of you really well. If I was your personal slave, probably eventually I'll disappoint even one of you, let alone the whole group. It's an impossibility. I can't fill my schedule going, oh, this person needs this person wants this. Now, I need to respond to certain needs at certain times and be available, but I can't live my life worrying about what people think about me. You can't live your life based upon your insecurities. Now, Jesus, again, I already talked about, he had no problem people coming to him saying, I want to make you king. And he says, all right, disciples, we're going to another town. But they wanted to make him king, man. Isn't that cool? But he didn't care. Jesus was not impressed or worried about what anybody thought but the Father, and he expected the exact same of his disciples. I was reading in my time yesterday in Matthew, and it was really interesting. Jesus was sharing this whole thing about religion and about it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you, but it's what comes out of your heart. And he made a few comments, and the disciples said to Jesus, I think it's so interesting, he said to him, are you aware that you have offended the rabbis? Are you aware? And Jesus, in his usual candor way, he didn't say, no, I don't care. He just says, beware of them guys. Jesus did not care about what people thought about him, and he expected his disciples not to care either. And so, but the truth is that, and I'm so guilty, so many of us, you need to ask the Lord this one. What percentage of your life, of your job, of your ministry, do you do not because God told you to, but because you care about what people think about you? 10%, 20%, 40%, 80%? Are you living for the praise and approval of others? I shared this story a long time ago. When I was in Bible school, I remember there was a group of us sitting out late one Friday night on a picnic table, hanging out, talking, and it turned towards spiritual things. And there was I had an opportunity. There was a girl there who had a very difficult upbringing, and I just felt the Lord tell me to do something, and so I gave her a hug. It was in a good sense. There were people around healthy, and it just says, I want you to understand, I just feel God telling me to share with you what it feels like to receive a hug from a man in a healthy sense. Not in abuse or somebody wants something. And she just bawled her eyes out. God was just ministering to her. Then the Lord spoke to me something and shared, at that time I was really getting involved in music. I was doing a bit of worship leading in the college. And I felt the Lord pointed out in that meeting, he said, there are times when you lead worship, not just to worship me and to be obedient, but you're looking for the praise or the affirmation of people that you're leading worship. And God said, I want you to tell the group. I'm thinking, but I just had this real dynamic ministry time with this person. You want me now to say this to this group? Like, this is just, I'm not sure about this. And, but, the Holy Spirit is just so strong on me. So I just said, I just want to confess to you guys that sometimes you see me leading worship, and sometimes it's I'm worshiping God, but there's a mixed motive in there. Out of my own insecurities, I'm looking for approval. I want people to think, oh yeah, look, you're a good worship leader, or like me by what I'm doing. See, that's how we feel ourselves sometimes. We want people to like us by what we do. And God really broke something in me that day. Do I still sometimes do stuff out of pride? Sure. I'm a human being. I am led sometimes by my insecurities. I admit it. And God is continuing to work on me. Thank God I've traveled a long way on that journey from where I was. But I don't even know how I got stuck on that. But that whole aspect of humbling ourselves, of building community, not based upon, what other people are thinking about us. Don't let the approval of others drive you. I read somewhere that, or I heard somebody once sharing when I was in Bible school, they were sharing about people in ministry that were doing this as we're all in ministry, but similar to like what we were doing. And they says that when he was 40 years in ministry, only 10% of his friends that started were still doing it. And some of those people, genuinely, God made me moved in different directions. But the point was, he said a lot of them were burned out. A lot of them were not really walking with the Lord anymore. I'll tell you what, if I do this for the approval of people, I will quit. And so there are days where it's heavy upon me, and I have to say, Lord, please deal with my heart. Help me not to seek the approval or worry about what people think about me. Help me to walk in relationships with people that are genuine and not based upon positions or titles or yet affected by what people say. See, a lot of people as well get hurt and they create walls. And I had an experience many years ago that hurt me very deeply, and I realized if I didn't deal with it, I would lead a ministry from here. But I knew God called us to be with people. And I just said, God, I don't want the walls. Please heal my heart. Help me walk through forgiveness. So it's very important that our approach, that we learn simplicity. That we learn that I do what I can do. God's not going to ask you. One day we'll stand before Him, and He's not going to say, what did you do with what I didn't give you? In fact, I think some of us are going to, some people stand before God and say, God, I did all these things. In fact, He even said, He gave a parable. They'll say, I cast out demons, I healed the sick. And He'll say, I don't even know you. Depart from me. Can you imagine living your whole life trying to be something and realizing that God was not pleased? And I think there'll be elements even in my own life will be like, God, here's my life. And God could just say, well, what were you doing that anyways? You had no business doing that. Most of the time, we don't have enough time because we're not doing what God's called us to do. If you feel that you don't have enough hours in your day, then you're probably walking in disobedience. You're probably walking in disobedience. You don't need time management. You need elimination out of your life. Because God, if He's who He says He is, He gives you not only enough, but more than enough. So if you don't have enough time, you've left the grace of God, and now you're walking in the flesh. See, God gives you grace to do what He's called you to do. But when I step out of His will, there's no more grace to do that. Somebody say, God, where are you? He says, I'm here. This is where I've called you to be. My grace is sufficient for that. But when we step outside. Okay, so I'll move through number 4. I'll move through some of these quickly. Community is a breeding ground for creativity. The church sometimes is so stale and stagnant and copying and everything like that. But really, community is creativity. Jesus, or the Father, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and the Father said in Genesis chapter 1, let us make man in our image in Genesis. And they created the earth. When the Trinity came together, when the Trinity had a conversation, I wonder what that conversation was like. Maybe it was a 3 million year conversation. But when the Trinity got together, the Godhead got together, formed community, they created. So therefore, when we get together, this should not, that's why uniformity is so dangerous. We need structures and there's things. That's why even sometimes this building to me, sometimes I love it and other days I hate it. I just like, have we boxed ourselves in to a certain way of doing things? That we need to be expressive. We need to think outside of the box. We need to think, how is church relevant to community? Not how do I drag people into this building? And we create systems that we think are beneficial, but actually stifle our creativity. And it's our religion that destroys the creativity. Religion says you've got to do things this way, that this is what it means to be spiritual. God is outside of that. And I know that because, and I was going to do slides and everything like that, and I know that because in the bottom, in fact, I even just saw at the bottom of the abyss, there's a place where they've never been. They're creating a sub right now to go farther into the abyss than they've ever been, and they're expecting to find all kinds of weird creatures that God made that nobody's ever seen. Why? Because God's creative. And sometimes as a church we think it's all about people need to get saved, they need to get healed in heart, and then they need to do the will of God, and we need to be going around preaching and worship and evangelism and and then we start talking about God and all this kind of stuff, and we get caught up. And yet God thought somehow in his magnificence that he'd make some little creature that he knew would take him 7,000-8,000 years to find, that's going to look really weird, because he thought it was a cool thing to do. God is interested in that because he's creative. So when we tap in together and the Holy Spirit is in our midst, we should be creative and expressive. And this is our culture. What we do here in a Sunday.